Welcome to the Public Works Nerds Podcast.
Welcome to the Public Works Nerds Podcast, a Public Works podcast of the nerds, by the nerds, and for the nerds. I'm your host, Mark Culver. Thanks for joining us. Today is hopefully our first in a series of episodes where we nerd out with APWA's top 10 Public Works leaders of 2023. According to APWA's website, the Top 10 Public Works Leaders of the Year award seeks to inspire excellence and dedication in public service by recognizing the outstanding career service achievements of individual public works professionals and officials from both the public and private sectors. The primary focus of the award is on career service to the public works profession rather than on any one single event or project. And I think that whole paragraph is well embodied by our first top 10 leader here, Russ Matthys. And he is a veteran of the Public Works Nerds Podcast, episode number 5 from season 1, where we talked about asset management. So first of all, congratulations, Russ. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. It's good to be back. I'm glad you're having me back. So.
Yeah, I re-listened to the episode, and we'll get into a little bit of how well this episode plays into the end of the last episode a little bit later. But it was a good reminder of, everything that you've done in your career, and talking about Egan and some of the influences in your career and that. So I encourage our audience, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that. It'll be great. Big intro to this episode here. But so let's again formally congratulations on being recognized as a top 10 public works leader. And I guess I want to ask you, what does that mean to you? How do you feel about that? I mean, obviously you're very honored, but talk about what that means to you, what this award means, and why do you think you got it? How did you get here?
Sure. Well, it was quite the surprise, to be very honest with you. I was asked to apply for it as one of the American Public Works Association Minnesota chapter does a great job representing the public works professionals of Minnesota, and they want to make sure that our members are being recognized for our efforts. They also want to, when there's opportunities, they want the chapter to be recognized for its efforts as well. So there's always a PACE award. So it's a Presidential Achievement. Oh boy, I'm spacing on what PACE means exactly, but
Presidential Achievement Chapter. But
it's
a chapter.
It's a chapter award recognition by the president, and so part of that, in order to meet all the requirements to receive that award, you need to have somebody from your chapter apply for this specific award, for a top 10 Public Works Leader Award. So I was asked to do that. And
so you basically nominated yourself kind of through that by filling out this application?
Yeah, in essence, yeah. So I was given the application of a previous award winner, Bev Farrer,
yep.
Thank you.
City of St. Paul.
And oh my goodness, Bev's application was incredible. And if you know Bev, Bev's an incredible person as a professional, but personally as well. Just a very wonderful person. And it's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to have an application that's going to look anything like Bev's, and mine didn't. But the person that asked me, I said, okay, if it's going to benefit the chapter, sure, I'll do it. I'll be honest, I'm not going to put my best effort in necessarily, but I'll do it. Well, as you get going and you're working on things, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to do this halfway.
Right.
So, let's put some effort into it. It was fun. As for me, it just kind of went through history. I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years. And honestly, as I went through it, there were some standout folks, in my life professionally that opened doors for me. That, as I'm looking at this list of achievements or things I've participated in, that those were the ones that had led me down the roads or opened those doors or guided me through those doors or showed me how to do things. And, for me, it was Tom Kildensky, it was Ken Hyder, and it was Tom Colbert.
Yeah.
And some of those, some of you folks listening are probably going to be familiar with some of those names, if not all of them. But, professionally, I was able to do things that no one else was able to do or no one else had done yet in some of the instances, and was just, got to do things well because that's how they did them, and so there was no other option. So that was a good reminder to me as I filled out the application. And then the other thing is just this chapter and the leadership in this chapter and all the opportunities that this being a part of this chapter for me to be active, taking an active role. And honestly, the only reason I did that was at Tom Colbert's encouragement, 20 plus years ago. And so that's the reason I received this award was because of this chapter and because of other chapter members, in essence, that I mentioned earlier that were mentors to me in my life. So it's thanks to them, that I received this. And, the thing I say about Egan a lot of times, it's all about location, location, location. Egan is in large part what it is because of where it's located, but it's also been all about the people, that have been a part of developing Egan and that were influencing me and that I got to work with throughout the years. So that's how it came to be. And and what I always tell everyone else is, I'm old. I've been doing this for a long time. So after a while, it's like, wow, you've really done a lot. Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, you've had a lot of time to do it too.
Exactly.
Right.
So
So how do you? You have a pretty seasoned staff.
Yes.
But overall, how do you then kind of pass that along? How do you make sure you're being Tom Colbert in making sure that your staff at all levels get engaged in their professional organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would encourage anyone listening that has staff to make sure that they're developing their staff and enabling them to be successful. And for me, it's been encouraging folks to become members of professional organizations such as APWA and City Engineers Association and a number of other ones. It's also giving them opportunities, trying to create opportunities at work, and then enabling them to be a part of that and for them to take a chance or take a risk, but not, and maybe, we all fail. And I think, we learn more because we do fail, but being the person that's going to be there to pick them up, or being the person that's not going to criticize them or beat them down because they did, make a mistake or something didn't go as well as you would have hoped it would have gone. But and just encouraging them to do it again, to try it again in the future. So, and looking for folks that have that passion or have that interest, and then just stir it up in them, and then push them a little bit, maybe to do things that would stretch them and aren't things that maybe they're not even comfortable doing those things necessarily, but just say, hey, just try it, just give it a try and see what it's like. And if it doesn't work out or it's just not their thing, cool, that's fine. Then find another thing that's your thing. So.
Yeah. Well, I think, and there are so many different ways to participate in these professional organizations, and obviously, being a part of the leadership is one, and I think you guys are very well represented in that between yourself and your city engineer, John Gorder, and even Tim Plath, and, being involved and engaged in the leadership of these organizations. But, there's also a lot to be said for just, like you said, Egan I think has a really great reputation for trying new things and being a leader in asset management or alternative, contracting and things like that.
Yes.
And what I think is great about that is you then use these professional organizations to pass that knowledge and experience to other cities, other agencies, so we can learn from you. And sure, you've learned from other agencies too.
Absolutely. Yep.
But it's that sharing of, it's not being afraid to fail, and then passing those successes and sometimes failures on to the rest of our peers, your peers and colleagues. You know?
Yep. So. Yeah, helping people learn lessons that we learned, so it's maybe a little less costly to them, whether that's financial or embarrassment or whatever, you know. So, and I appreciate you recognizing that, Mark. And I've been doing STEM outreach for 25 plus years, and that's all about education.
Yep.
And honestly, it trails into some of the other stuff we're going to talk about. But I'm big about education, and it's whether it's educating kids about what public works is all about and how they can take their interest in problem solving or math and science and apply that to a career and as an engineer or as a public works professional, or else educating the public about it takes some money and some effort to go and provide the excellent road system that you like and the trails that you like and the safe drinking water that you're demanding, and you should,
right?
And the ability to keep your homes from flooding and getting that wastewater away from your home as soon as you're done with it. So that so it's all kinds of education, and likewise just educating our peers that about different ways that they can consider doing things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's spend a couple more minutes talking about your volunteer efforts, let's just call it, within the industry. But you touched on STEM, and I think you've also been pretty involved with Future Cities as well. So talk a little bit about what you've been doing to promote STEM. Like, what have you done with the schools and such to be intentional about that?
So, as a part of APWA, we have a public awareness committee, and really the focus of that is educating the youth. And so STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, for those that don't know STEM, is a big aspect of that. So we work with a variety of different organizations, including Spark Path, that used to be Success Beyond the Classroom. We've worked with 4-H organizations before. We've worked with the Science Museum and are continuing and developing even more so to work with the Science Museum. But we'll go to different events sometimes, and what the events will typically do is they'll bring in students from, I think, third grade is probably the youngest, and then upwards to high school, juniors and seniors. And then we'll usually have hands-on type of activities for them to get involved with. So at the same time, we're telling the students about us, what we were like when we were their age, what our interests were.
And you're not scaring them off yet?
No, I hope not. Most of these kids are good students, and they have similar interests, so it's I think it's valuable for them to see and understand that maybe those interests that they have right now could pan out to be something that would they could make a career out of. And then just doing different the variety of activities is maybe they're building interchanges. Maybe we're talking about how to go from a 4-legged intersection with stop signs to a signalized intersection to an interchange. Or maybe we're showing folks teaching them about drainage and how the variety of different activities that go on the surface of the ground can actually become part of, once it rains or the snow melts, that can become part of the runoff. And maybe that's, water's okay to be going in our ponds and lakes and rivers, but maybe that other stuff that's sitting on the ground isn't necessarily. And there's ways that we can capture those things and then just let the water go where we all want it to go, but capture the other things. So those are just a couple of a variety of different sessions we do and have for the students. So and other things, we're at the state fair and have been for the past 10 years now, I think. And we a lot of times we'll bring our sessions. We'll maybe have a model of a water system, and we'll have a water tower, and we show the kids how the pressure works, to get the water, distribute the water throughout the community. But it's a variety of different ways like that. Now we are beginning to work with the Science Museum, and we've gone to events at the Science Museums where there's one-day events. We'll have a table, you know, and the kids can come and maybe there's an activity where they can flip up some, they can look at a cross section of a stormwater system or a storm drainage system, in essence, and kind of look at what happens to the variety of different pollutants, like I talked about before. But we also we're starting to work with the Science Museum on mentoring to some students that they have. And so we're inviting students, and we're just beginning this, but I'm pretty excited about it. But we'll have them come to our shops,
oh, cool.
You know, and then they can see what it's like, you know, to do maintenance work, and maybe they'll get to drive in the snowplow truck, you know, or a pickup truck, and go to different projects and things like that too. So we've done shadowing with the school district that's in Egan with 196 for quite a few years. John Gorders does great with that. He's had a lot of students shadow him.
What age group is that usually?
That one's usually high school.
Okay.
So it's usually juniors and seniors for shadowing. But for working with the Science Museum, it might even be some middle school students as well. And just, again, help them see what it is that Public Works is, because it's so very few people fully understand what Public Works is, as you know. So.
Right. Yeah, it's, you know, we say it a lot, and I have to quote Mark Ray on this. You know, we make normal happen, and that's the thing, is we are normal, so we don't stand out. You know, plow events are probably the biggest thing that we stand out on. Maybe water main breaks, you know, something like that. But otherwise, we're kind of in the background by design. Yep. And we're okay with that. Yes. That means we're doing things well. So
it fits us for the most part.
Well, cool. That's great. As far as bringing attention to, and I love the fact that you're, you know, not only just pushing the, you know, the science and technology and engineering and math, but you're also talking about, you know, driving the plow trucks and, you know, the maintenance side of it, because I think it's important for kids to understand that they don't have to go to college to have a good career.
Yep.
You know, and they can still make a difference.
Yep.
So, and I think that's, given the state of our workforce right now, it's a really important message. You know, we need people to understand that we need good people in these maintenance positions too.
Yeah, we definitely do, Mark. And I'll throw this out. This is one new thing that we're just starting to talk about, and at the national level, they've had discussions with it, but working with high school guidance counselors. And helping them or encouraging them to put Public Works in their list of potential career opportunities. Yep. And to your point that you were just, you know, going from, it's not just all about the engineers and the scientists or the science and math folks that are probably going to go into college. Yep. There's just as many, if not more, positions available for those that, you know, don't think college is an opportunity or an interest that they would have. And I'm telling you what, there's good paying jobs, as you know, in Public Works for doing maintenance type work and field work, you know, and driving the snow plows and things like that. And there's still leadership opportunities in those roles as well. So,
yep. Well said. And, you know, even in between that, you know, there are a lot of, we have a lot of really well qualified, smart technicians out there too, that, you know, maybe went to tech school for a couple of years and are doing some amazing things. And really doing a lot of the work, a lot of the design work for us engineers, you know, and being out in the field and making calculations on the fly and stuff like that. So anyway, all of that, it's that big picture of all of the different careers and opportunities that there are in the public sector, in the Public Works world. So, well, thank you for your work in, you know, mentoring and introducing that to the middle school and high schoolers and that. All right, well, let's move into the topic of the day. It like I said earlier, I was listening to our previous episode number 5, and talking about asset management and getting into tangents about pavement management and stuff like that. But towards the end, it was an interesting conversation because I asked you about, I think there are some other states that have actual requirements for asset management reporting. And you mentioned Michigan's got this asset management coalition or
Michigan Infrastructure Council.
Yeah, the Michigan Infrastructure Council. Yeah. And, and this was in April that we recorded this. Yep. And so the session was just going on, and you're like, yeah, I've got this state representative that's kind of talking to me about something, so we may end up with something similar. And lo and behold, I think we did.
We did.
So in that legislative session, they formed this task force. So it's called the Infrastructure Resilience Advisory Task Force, which is a mouthful.
Yes.
And not a very good acronym.
No.
Either.
I've tried. It's not.
No. We gotta be more proactive about that. Like good acronyms, but. So what is this task force,
all right,
Russ? And I should point out that not only were you involved in the early discussions of this, but you have since been appointed to this task force as the APWA representative.
That's correct. Yep.
All right. So talk about what this task force is.
So what the task force is the Minnesota Legislature established this task force to create a report that was due to the governor on February 1st of 2024. So what they did is the legislature required that there was a number of different representatives that would be a part of this task force. So they had the various commissioners of all the departments within the state of Minnesota select a person. And then they also chose a variety of different professional organizations, I'd say, which APWA was included as one, and then those organizations then selected representatives. So we've been meeting since, I think September 26th or the end of September, every other week for the most part. We had maybe a few weeks in there that we didn't keep on that schedule, but we have through most of the past 3 months. And what we're trying to do is in essence, replicate what the Michigan Infrastructure Council is in large part. So if you're wondering, well, what is that? You can always go to the website. It's pretty easy to find for that. But so we've been talking. We've had a couple presentations or a few presentations as part of the task force. The executive director for the MIC, or the Michigan Council, presented to us. We've also had local presentations by the University of Minnesota staff, as well as a newly created entity, and I'm spacing on the name of it, but I couldn't find it here. Anyhow, within Minnesota, another creation of the most recent legislative session that is going to help local agencies utilize federal funding. I think Minnesota, and this is going back a little bit, but Minnesota historically hasn't received as many federal tax dollars as they've contributed.
Right.
And I think that's, 80% of some of the numbers I've heard in the past, but whatever. And so this organization, this entity within the state of Minnesota would help local agencies, townships, cities, counties recognize what all is available, and then enable them to apply for and be successful in receiving those applications. So, and that's part of what this task force efforts are as well. So in essence, it really comes down to encouraging public agencies, and as well as private companies too, to practice good asset management. So it's trying to make sure that we're getting as taxpayers and as customers and as members of this state of Minnesota, community members, that we're getting the best bang for our dollar. And so it's trying to make sure that as you well know, there's a lot of different parties, a lot of different entities that have infrastructure within, even within our public right-of-way, or within easements, or, they provide, collectively, they provide the quality of life that we all have here in Minnesota. But, and there's Gopher State One call that goes a long ways in helping us to coordinate our efforts so that when somebody's digging into the ground to install or repair one of their infrastructures, they're recognizing that there's others in the close proximity, and that they're, Gopher State One call is marking those or identifying those. So ideally, there's nothing is damaged or nothing is hit while we're trying to work on our things. Well, it goes a long ways to know that ahead of time than just to find that out, in the 48-hour period in which the call was made and the markings were placed on the ground. So part of what the task force is doing is just trying to encourage and enable and educate all of us, but in particular those entities that are handling or managing the infrastructure to best be able to work with one another so that we can limit damage, our worst case scenarios, emergencies, from occurring, but also starting to plan to do things together so that, once the ground is open, and I've opened the ground to put in a sewer pipe or a water pipe, well, there's other things that could go into the ground at the same time.
And I think hearkening back to that Michigan Infrastructure Council, just looking at the presentation that they gave you guys, they have that Dig Once project portal. So with that intent, like, you are notifying everybody in this area that you're going to be opening up this street. So if you need to replace your electrical lines or something like that, you're encouraged to do that. But I think there's a big difference between encouraging and trying to, develop this coordination and such, and mandating it. And do you see, and I don't know how much you can talk about or what's being talked about, but do you see any mandates coming out of this task force?
No. And that's something we've talked about, Mark, to quite a great extent. We've made it very clear this will not be, there will likely be a board that's created or recommended. The task force will likely recommend the creation of a board.
An ongoing entity.
Ongoing entity, but they're making it very clear that it will not be a regulatory. They have any regulatory, it won't be a regulatory agency or anything like that. So, so that's the challenge. And so there's a lot of focus on educating the public, educating all these various entities, whether public or private. Some of us have some ideas that maybe we need to do a little bit more than that, and I think those discussions are yet to be had. We've started those discussions, and we'll see, how that goes. But and I've shared, and I just shared as you and I are talking, I've been working on educating students and others about STEM, for 25 plus years. And I like doing it. I think it's a good thing. I'm not doing it just because I enjoy it. I'm doing it because I think it makes a difference. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not seeing a lot of difference. Now, I'm not necessarily tracking or inviting folks to come up and tell me whether or not they participated in the Future City competition when they were in 8th grade, or 7th grade or 6th grade. But I think we do need to do a little bit more, and so we'll see where that goes, and we'll see. I'm really excited about what's going to come out from the efforts of the task force. I think it's going to help change the way we do things in Minnesota, and hopefully with that, others will recognize the value in that to all of us, and out of that, I think there may come maybe a more of an urgency on the need to ensure everybody's making similar efforts, because it's not just about the coordination, as you know. Yep. I mean, we've got, so at the City of Eagan, we have a variety of different utilities that are ours. We've got water pipes, we got sewer pipes, we got drainage pipes, we have roads.
You even probably have some fiber in the
We
ground.
even have fiber. Yeah, we do. And so what we're starting to look at as part of our asset management is it used to be, because Eagan is fairly young, yep. It used to be our capital improvement plan was all about, okay, what street needs to be overlaid next, and we didn't worry about the pipes underground because they were pretty new.
Yep.
Well, not all of them are new anymore. And so now we're starting to look at, and it's a much more involved effort, but we're starting to look at, okay, well, is it really the road that's going to need to be improved next, or is it the water main that's going to need to be improved next? And when does that water main or when does that sewer pipe need to be improved next? And I do not want to reconstruct a road. And this is a thing we're trying to avoid with conflicts with others, but I really don't want to reconstruct a road, a City of Eagan road, and then 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years later go and tear up that brand new road.
Yep.
To put in a water main pipe that I really should have known was pretty close to being needed, pretty close to be in need of replacement. Yep. So that's a big part of the education for this, because you've sat in the same chair I'm sitting in. A lot of times you're just reacting. Mm-hmm. You're reacting to the water main break. Yep. You're reacting to the snow fall. You're reacting to the potholes, and so it's time for us to. I mean, we have to react. We're always going to have to react. That's the nature of what we do. But we really all need to be focusing on that future and how we can best coordinate those efforts of all the different assets that we have to manage, because we cannot, what I've grown to recognize is we cannot afford to continue to go on the course that we're currently on. We can't afford to address what we currently have to manage. We have to do it. We have to do it on a more organized and coordinated basis.
Hey everyone, I just want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, Bolton & Mink, who is producing and editing our podcasts.
At Bolton & Mink, we believe all people should live in a safe, sustainable, and beautiful community. We promise every client two things. We'll work hard for you, and we'll do a good job. We take a personal interest in the work being done around us. And at the end of the day, we're real people offering real solutions.
Do you see this task force and the subsequent board, presumably, making some recommendations about reporting?
Yes, I see.
And is that a mandate, or is that a recommendation?
Right now, I would tell you it's going to be a recommendation.
Okay.
That'll be an annual report that would go to the legislature, and there would be like best management practices that would be suggested for public agencies and private companies, utility companies and such. At this point, I would see it's probably just being recommendations, and then, ideally the legislature is going to act on those and maybe provide some incentives.
Right.
A suggestion I would have is that, I mentioned before about this new state entity that is going to help all of us recognize, hey, there's some federal money that we can utilize for the needs we have, and in essence, addressing the assets that we have. Well, perhaps those that have an asset management program and that best understand what their needs are should be prioritized for that federal money.
Right.
Or
maybe even state bonding.
Maybe even state bonding.
I think it's a much harder sell because it gets very political, but I think we could certainly make an argument that if more and more communities had an established asset management program, and as we've talked about before, and we'll talk about in the future, that can mean many different things. But just having an idea of the age of your infrastructure and having a replacement plan in place would probably save that community money in the long run.
Yes.
And probably result in fewer emergency bonding requests. So why not say, well, if you don't have one of these plans, you're going to, like you said, maybe it's not that you can't get the money, because some communities just are going to need the money. But you're not as prioritized.
Right.
Right. But I love having that carrot to it. And I do think that it's something that for some communities, it just because of the size of the community, the resources that they have, the other priorities that they have, there's a lot of things that these cities are dealing with. If you don't have that incentive, they're going to keep putting it off. Maybe it's something that, it's not in their budget because it's not a priority.
Right.
Does Michigan require reporting? I can't remember. I thought that one of the states out there required some sort of reporting.
Michigan, my recollection is Michigan does a lot of work towards creating champions.
Yeah.
And so what
does that mean? Because I saw that on the presentation too.
Yeah. So what they're doing is they're trying, if you're listening to, me talk about this, in our conversation now, I think you could probably take away that I'm a champion for asset management.
Absolutely. The champion in Minnesota, perhaps, but yes.
So that's what the MIC is all about, is educating folks and helping them understand the value that their community can receive by making the extra effort to do asset management. We all do asset management. For some of us, it's up in our head.
Yep.
Yep. And that can work. That can work all right. If you're smarter than me, it probably it could work really well. But for most of us, as our systems grow or as they age, we need to track things a little bit better. And I think so. For the champions, in essence, that's all about encouraging them to, collect data, to track the data, to whether it's the age, the pipe type, the soils that's been installed, and all the variety of different things that can impact the aging and the life expectancy, of our assets and our infrastructure. So.
And I don't know. Again, I just keep pointing to Michigan because it's an established council and effort and everything. So I'm just kind of curious where they have evolved to and maybe where they think they're going. But do they provide any basic tools for agencies like hey, here's a template for a spreadsheet for asset management, or here's maybe even a ArcGIS plugin or something? Is there something like that they provide? And do you see the advisor, your task force, maybe advocating for something similar? Yeah,
so some things that they actually provide are things that they're doing, are ideas, I guess, that we've garnished from what Michigan's doing, is having like a website where you can go and probably it's you would be an approved user as a representative of a public agency or private company that has assets, that you could go on there and you could see where Egan's water and sewer and storm sewer is located. And because you're a certain electric company that's going to go into Egan and you have a big project and you want to see where everybody else is at. So that's going to take some effort to get towards that, but I know that is something that Michigan has started. I'm not sure if they've completed that. And then just best management practices. So the other thing is just creating like this templates that you reference. So having templates so that folks that maybe really don't have anything other than maybe things written on a sheet of paper, that There could be templates even for coordinating installations, of both public and private, utilities. So those are two of the things that we've talked about on the task force that would be recommendations, I think, as part of the report that we're going to provide, for the governor. And the board in and of itself, that's likely going to be recommended. Those recommendations may come from them, so I'm not sure if the task force is mainly going to just recommend having the board with suggestions of these other recommendations, or if it's going to be a package deal. So
you keep talking about private entities, private utilities, presumably.
Yes.
And I was trying to scan through the list, but what kind of representation is on the task force for the private utilities currently?
So currently we have the only electric utility that manages nuclear power plants, and that was the language that was used. But Xcel Energy is involved.
That's a pretty important asset.
That is a very important asset. And then we also have the municipal utility folks are represented. So there are a lot of utilities, electrical utilities within the state that are municipally managed. And so they are represented as well. We have talked about, in fact, we spoke about this yesterday at our latest meeting, about having rural electric co-ops to be a part of this effort as well. And so then there was also discussion about gas too. So, and telecommunications.
I was going to, lead into that, because obviously when we think about vital utilities and services to the general public, water, sewer, electricity, gas, all of those things are vital to our way of life, to just basic living.
Yes.
As the way we've established it anyway.
Yeah.
We need to heat our homes, especially in Minnesota. We need to cool them in the summer. We need to have lights. And obviously we need to have running water. And you mentioned it. We have to make sure that water gets away from our house when we want it to. But, it's getting to the point in this technologically advanced society that we've built, that we've evolved into, that internet is no longer even our cell phones, it's not a luxury anymore. It is a basic need.
Yes.
If you want to be able to register for things. Talk about applying for federal funding or public assistance or this, that, and the other. You need the internet.
Yes.
And you can go to a library or something like that, but people, you have to have an email.
Yes.
In order to be notified about things. So it's interesting to me, and I don't know what kind of conversations, and maybe this is the question, is what kind of conversations have been done at the task force level about internet as a vital component, and when do we have stronger requirements? Because I think that's one of the things as city engineers and public works professionals, there's a couple of telecommunications providers out there that have been infamous for not locating their facilities, or not locating them well, or not responding when something happens, because stuff happens. But have you had conversations about more mandates or something on the telecommunications industry?
The discussions about telecommunications has been to ensure that they're a part of this discussion, and we're really focusing on asset management. And even though I would, I could argue along with you, I think that part of that asset management is managing your asset when you need to.
They have assets. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. We're not talking about, the task force isn't talking about getting quite down into that, much of the weeds, I guess I'll just say. But no, I would strongly encourage that, though, and support that.
But they, and to your point, they should be integrally involved in the whole dig once portal.
Yes. Yeah.
And there are other conversations going on in other circles and obviously it's the Venn diagram. We are certainly a part of that other circle, but talking about different requirements for locates, and there's talk about more repercussions, more outcomes, negative outcomes to these companies that aren't locating their facilities. So I know that's going on in different circles, different legislation that's likely going to get proposed this session, but just kind of curious what was going on at the task force level on that. But it's good. I mean, they should be involved in these conversations.
And I would say, to what the task force efforts I think are trying to do, Mark, is they're trying to head it off at the very beginning by encouraging that communication, up front, so that 3-5 years before the projects are being done, that there's this coordination that so that when we do get to actually digging the ground, that you know this, you probably know the utility guy's son's baseball schedule by that time, because you've been working for a few years on making sure everyone on the same page, so that at the point you're doing the construction, you could almost call him on his personal cell phone and say, hey, are you coming out? Yep, I'm on my way. But so I think that hopefully would circumvent what you're talking about, what we see happening, with the conflicts, again, one of the driving force for the two representatives that are chairing and then vice chair of the task force is to avoid those messes, those, someone going in a project one year and somebody else coming and tearing up the same section of street the following year, or having those big holes open for way too long because people can't resolve their issues, so those are definitely things that I think they've experienced, seen, that kind of drove them to the passion that they have now for this. Do you
ever foresee us getting to the point, and I think that other legislation also wants to talk about, mandating all of the utilities, public and private, to digitize their infrastructure, the digital twin kind of concept. And I would say the public agencies, we've got that. But do you ever think we'll get to the point where there'll be like this project portal, this place that we can go to and we have confidence in the lines that we see on the map, that, hey, this is where the gas line is, and this is the material that it is, and things like that? Do you think we can get there?
That's the hope of the task force.
Yeah.
So do I think we can get there? I hope so.
Yeah.
It's
a lot easier said than done.
It is. It really is. And as you know as well as I do, we've tried to various degrees just within our own communities to do that, over the past 25 years, and it's been challenging. And I'll be honest with you, we're part of it. The challenge was us too initially. But I think we're there, like you said. I think most cities are there, most public agencies are there, and I feel I'm completely confident that the private entities are there as well. The private companies, it's just the sharing of the information. And so I spoke earlier about there'd potentially be a website that folks could go to. Well, it's not going to be open to the public.
Yeah.
It'd be open to approved, representatives of the different entities that, I don't know if they'd be sworn to secrecy or what, but, that they could ideally be able to see all the other existing utilities in their area where they're doing the project, so that, they could go ahead and do a design that actually would have the least amount of issues when you're actually out in the field building it, because you pretty much knew where everything was going to be.
Yeah. And I understand, I get the the perspective of, obviously there's security issues. There's telling the public where all the electrical infrastructure is and things like that. Now, some of it is pretty obvious. I mean, you see the power pole, you see the tower, you see the transformer, the transfer station, what have you. Okay, it's pretty hard to not know where those are. But to put it on a map, there's some security issues. And I also understand that from the private side that there are, kind of trade secrets.
Yes.
That they're investing new cabling or what have you in certain areas, and maybe they don't want their competitor to know that they're investing in that in order to expand their service in there someday. Mm-hmm. But if I guess my perspective on it is, if you're putting something in the public right away,
yep, it
is public data. I'm sorry. That's the cost of using our right away. Because for the public good, we need to know what that is and where it is and things like that. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. It sure would make life a lot easier if we look at a map and say, because we do design locates, sure, but even those aren't always 100% accurate.
No.
And where's the accountability? That was the word I was looking for earlier. Where's the accountability at the design level of a utility not locating their line or not putting it in the right place or something? There's not much there. So anyway, it's hard enough to prove blame when something gets hit.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter. I mean, really. I mean,
Right.
It's the consequences of it being hit is what matters. And,
Yep.
None of us like that to happen. So.
Right. So as we get towards the end of our hour here, how far behind do you think agencies in Minnesota are on asset management? If you could grade us like A through F as a whole across the state, where would you put that grade?
Oh, wow.
From what you've heard, and you're pretty tied into a lot of different asset management groups, so.
I would say probably less than a C.
Yeah.
So was that a D, a C minus, D plus? And folks listening to this may go, we know better than you. We're doing things a lot better than you think we are. Again, I think when you look at, just as a comparison, okay, if you ask somebody, well, who's got the most roads in Minnesota? Most people probably say, well, MnDOT. Oh, no, it's not MnDOT. It's not the counties. It's not the cities. It's the townships.
Yep.
Okay, so the townships, and I'm not being critical of anyone that's managing townships, but talk about reaction. That's their lives for the most part, in large part.
And right, when you talk about reaction at the township level, I mean, the roads are one thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation about funding for roads for townships. It's still not nearly enough for them, but there's a lot of conversation about it. It's the stuff underneath the roads that's really the biggest concern for them.
Right. Yeah.
And the biggest expenses.
Right. So, and then they're all connected, so once you start addressing issues underground, you're creating problems or things that need to be addressed above ground too. Yep. So, I don't know. That's C minus, D plus. I do know that, and I don't know if you're going to go there or not, but, the Institute of Asset Management.
I wanted to talk about that too.
Okay.
So why don't you go ahead and mention that? Yeah, what is that?
So that's an organization. It's an English, it's got an English source or I guess base.
And by English, you mean like Great Britain English?
Great Britain English, yes. So so England, Australia, New Zealand, a lot of, I guess, the British Empire, I guess I would say.
Former British
Empire, yeah, sorry about that.
For those in Australia, we know you're not part of the British Empire.
Yeah. But they are... those countries are really, I mean, they're at the A plus level, for asset management. And, just some of the discussion we had earlier, there's some mandates, there's some requirements for public agencies and I think private companies as well to have a level of asset management in order for them to get funding in order for them to, to get approvals and things like that. So, we've got a chapter of the Institute of Asset Management here in Minnesota. The latest meeting, we had Met Council make a presentation, as well as Robbinsdale. Richard did an excellent job.
McCoy. Talk about Aussie.
Yeah, talk about Aussies. So, and I think part of Richard's passion may have to do with his, Australia origination. But I think there's a lot of communities within the state of Minnesota that are doing what they can with their assets, and some of them maybe are starting to recognize that they're going to have to replace what they have, or they're going to have to do more and more repairs. But I think for most of us, we've just been getting by, and out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
As long as things aren't breaking, great. They must be working, I guess. The potholes we see, we can patch them, but the broken pipes underground that are leaking into the groundwater, are taking in infiltration, and overflowing our sewage treatment facilities. The big thing that I think we're going to see more and more of, and I've been hearing of it already. Clean Water Act, 1972. Mm-hmm. Feds provided a lot of money for sewage treatment facilities in smaller communities.
So 50 years ago.
50 years ago.
I see where you're going on this, Russ.
Okay. So a good, just, and everybody listening probably knows that, for those that aren't public works folks and happen to be hearing, a good wastewater treatment plant will last 50 years.
Yep.
A well-designed, well-constructed. A lot of those haven't necessarily. Those are complex operations, and you've had good people, I think, the communities have, that have ran those and operated them, and maybe done as much maintenance as they were afforded money to do. Maybe haven't done as much maintenance as should have been done or was needed. And regardless, they're coming up to the end of their life, and they were millions of dollars, back in 1972 to construct, or the mid 70s to construct. Some of those communities have maybe grown. A lot of them have probably stayed the same or even shrunk a little bit. They have not been, and I have had a recent conversation on this. They have not been planning for the replacement of those facilities. They have not been increasing their utility rates to provide money, or a savings
or even keep
account.
Up with inflation.
Exactly. And so once your sewage system fails, that's not a good situation. And it could be impacting your drinking water or not, but similarly, your drinking water system was probably on a pretty equal course. Maybe it's got a few more years, decades to go, but my concern is, and I'm not usually not a negative person, but my concern is the little towns in outstate Minnesota where I love to go grouse hunt or pheasant hunt, or just get off the freeway and drive through and show my kids what small town America can be like, or Minnesota can be like. They may not be able to literally provide a healthy, community where someone can actually live and thrive. And so we may lose communities because people can't live in them.
Right.
It's not healthy for them, and who knows if the health department comes in, or the PCA, the Pollution Control Agency, and says, you don't have a viable a sewer system here, you can't live in these homes.
Yeah.
So
I recall last year, was a year or two ago, reading a story about a community. I don't remember the name of the community. It was in Minnesota somewhere. It's probably best I don't call them out anyway. But it was interesting because they were a community of septic tank systems.
Okay.
And the septic systems were all failing at the same time. And they weren't going to be able to build them to modern standards.
Sure.
They weren't going to be able to meet the drainage field size and this, that, and the other for their septic systems. So then they were looking at, tens of millions of dollars
right.
to install a sewage treatment facility, system.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't remember the population of the town, but it was a pretty small town. There was no way that this community was going to be able to carry that burden.
Yeah.
So then they need extra funding. And then it's that question, to your point of, well, do you help them? Or because that same community in 50, 60 years is probably going to have the same problem.
Right.
So it's an interesting question about small town America, like you said,
right.
A lot of these small communities. And maybe we can find ways to be more efficient in how you treat the water and things like that. But if they're not being proactive about asset management and those things, they can't at least help themselves
right.
by saving some money up over time to address that situation.
Correct.
So a very important topic. Will be really interesting to see what the outcomes of this task force are. And February 1st.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. Thank you.
This will air in January sometime, but you don't have a lot of time to finish your report.
I think we're going to be doing some homework. So
yeah. Well, good luck. Look forward to the outcome of that, and thank you for all you've done for Public Works and this asset management topic. You were appointed to this task force for a reason. So thank you for that.
Yes.
And once again, congratulations on your top 10 Public Works Leader Award.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Russ. And one last thing before we go, we hope you've enjoyed the episode and the podcast in general. And, all we ask is that you help us spread the word. So social media, Instagram. I have an Instagram. We have an Instagram account. Yeah. And LinkedIn is kind of our big one. So like it, repost it, spread the word, tell your colleagues about the podcast. But as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we will see you next time. Nerds out.